Hi, my name is Tamika Perkins. I am a graduate student at Liberty University. I am studying life coaching, and today I will be giving a presentation on interpersonal communication. Please advance to the next slide. Interpersonal communication is something we all should strive to achieve. Interpersonal communication is something that I consider to be a building block for relationships. It is described by Stewart as communication that happens when the people involved talk and listen in ways that maximize the presence of the personal. When the parties involved in the communication process exercise the ability to receive and perceive, which is the act of inhaling, and the ability to give and express, which is the act of exhaling, interpersonal communication takes place. Achieving this ability is a process that involves both deliberate and intentional focus. Please advance to the next slide. All right, my overarching goal is to become a more mindful listener by utilizing the talker-listener technique, where I take turns taking on the roles of the listener and then the talker. I desire to intentionally focus only on what the other party is communicating without interruption, which is inhaling, and respond after they have given their complete thought as appropriate, which is exhaling, by utilizing the nexting technique of responding positively in a fruitful manner on a consistent basis. All right, please advance to the next slide. All right, now let's talk about enlarging the conversation. Enlarging the conversation can be defined as being open to discuss and able to acknowledge there are many different aspects and opinions, and the ability to keep the communication active and open. Susan Scott shared in the Stewart text that no single conversation is guaranteed to change our lives, but any single conversation can. Now that is food for thought. Enlarging each conversation can potentially and eventually have a life-changing impact. Please advance to the next slide. All right, now we're going to discuss behavioral blends. Each one of us has a pattern of behaviors that are based on our personality, otherwise known as our temperaments. 4 temperament styles have been identified, which is known as the DISC model. Dr. Mills Carbonell has produced an assessment of the DISC model that combines personality and faith-based profiles. Now I'm going to give a brief description of each personality profile as outlined in the DISC model. All right, D is the active, task-oriented personality type, and it is driving, directing, demanding, dominating, determined, decisive, and doing. Now I, which is the active, people-oriented personality profile type, and it is inspiring, influencing, inducing, impressing, interactive, and interested in other people. All right, the S is the passive, task-oriented personality type, and it is steady, stable, shy, security-oriented, submissive, and specialist. And then lastly, the C is the passive, people-oriented personality type, and it has been cautious, competent, calculating, compliant, careful, and contemplative. Please advance to the next slide. All right, this is my personal DISC assessment. This is a graph of this is expected of me. And as you can see here from this graph, I scored high in the S type. Please advance to the next slide. A general description of this type implies I have a tendency to be more sensitive and submissive. I typically have an inclination to blend in with the crowd in an effort to be still and quiet because I believe that this is what others want. I tend to be loyal and friendly on an individual basis and believe people want me to be withdrawn and reserved in public. I feel I need to serve humanity and do what I am told and avoid challenging others by doing what I want to do. I tend to be well-liked due to having a humble spirit and a quiet demeanor. I don't tend to seem outwardly friendly, but I do have a lot of friends. People tend to like me because I'm not overbearing or confrontational. And I believe this is an accurate assessment of myself. Please advance to the next slide. Now, as you can see here in this next slide, this is the graph of this is me. And as you can see, my behavioral blend scores were highest in the S, C, and then the I. Please advance to the next slide. A general description of my behavioral blend implies I have a tendency to be more passive than active. I have strong people skills and can be both outgoing as well as reserved. I can be the life of the party or a quiet spectator. I like to influence and interact with people, but can also withdraw and concentrate on specific tasks. People tend to like my friendliness, enthusiasm, and cordiality. I may rub some people the wrong way by having a critical and fault finding attitude. I tend not to be pushy or controlling unless people try to get me to do things that go against my beliefs or plans. I don't have to be in charge. I have a preference for peace and harmony, as well as organized environments. People like my multifaceted flexibility, but sometimes will like me to be more decisive and direct. Please advance to the next slide. All right. My conversation has been influenced in both positive and negative ways based on my behavioral blend. And I'm going to start with the positive. Positively, I am trustworthy. I am eager to listen. I'm relational. I possess wisdom, and I am a good problem solver. But on the negative side, my conversation has been influenced by my behavioral blend in that I tend to hold back. I can be too critical. I can be indecisive. I can be too quiet, and I can be over analytical. All right, please advance to the next slide. All right, now we're going to discuss some potential barriers that I have notated in my own personal interpersonal context. All right, the first barrier is technology. Technology has lowered my inclination to connect on an interpersonal level. Rapid development in the technology communication field in the current era of digital technology nowadays is able to change the patterns of communication among people. And for me, this change has served as a distraction. But a way to deal with this is to be intentional and utilize mindful listening. As outlined by the Stewart text, mindful listening eliminates multitasking and heightens the ability to focus solely on the task or conversation at hand. All right, the next potential barrier I discovered was hurtful messages. As I discovered about myself in the DISC model, I can be critical and judgmental. Hurtful messages are often difficult to repair, so in order to deal with this barrier, I can utilize the concept of nexting by offering a positive response, knowing that I can decide that what I say next can improve the quality of the situation. And then the last potential barrier I discovered was the flat brain syndrome. At times, flat brain syndrome has taken my ability to function well with and produce effective communication outcomes with others. And one way to deal with this is by being more open and accepting of others and recognize the difference between my thoughts and my feelings. All right, please advance to the next slide. All right, now we're going to identify noise pollution. Noise pollution, both internal and external, can hinder effective communication. Some examples of internal noise include thinking of what you want to say next, feeling stressed, or a person's emotional state, such as being angry, sad, or feeling betrayed. All of those can affect your internal way of communicating, the way that you are listening. And some examples of external noise pollution include any outside distractions such as television, loud music, phone, children crying, or something as a train passing by. All of those external sounds can be pollution to communication. Please advance to the next slide. All right, now we're going to identify some solutions for noise pollution. The first solution that I have identified is listening empathetically, and this will eliminate internal anger, thoughts, and stress, which will promote focus and encourage the talker. All right, the second solution is understanding the other person's behavioral blend and how it affects the way they communicate. All right, the next solution is increase the talker's self-confidence by listening with respect and allowing them to manage and come up with their own solutions to their problems. All right, and the next solution is to avoid the flat brain tango by eliminating the desire to be defensive and attack others with our responses. And this is something that we all can work on and do better. And it's really something that can really produce great outcomes in communication. And then the last solution identified for noise pollution is to stop multitasking, to eliminate external noise and begin to focus mindfully and actively on the conversation that's taking place. Turn off the TV, avoid checking emails and texts, and then to move to a private room or private space where you can listen mindfully. Please advance to the next slide. All right, my plan of action for turning my goal into a reality is to first remain mindful and focus on the current task at hand by staying in the moment and not thinking ahead to what I want to do or say next. My next plan of action is to listen actively when it is my role to listen and to speak up when it's my role to be the talker. All right, my third plan of action is to be more open by offering self-disclosure to the other person, focusing on the present, sharing my ideas on things that are currently occurring, covering more topics on a deeper level, and mindfully match my level of self disclosure with that of the other person's. Please advance to the next slide. All right, continuing on with my plan of actions to turning my goals into a reality. Next is to choose to respond in a positive manner that by deliberately asking myself, what can I say next that will produce a more uplifting effect on this current conversation? I will implement nexting in my daily communication. All right, and then the next one is I will avoid degenerative communication spirals. As you know, I saw in the movie Fireproof in the relationship of Caleb and Catherine. I can be more forthcoming and not make assumption about how the other person is feeling or about what the other person is thinking. And my last plan of action to turn my goal into reality is having faith in God. I know that without faith it is impossible to please God, so I will choose to have faith intentionally. I will choose to build my faith through the Word of God, and I will continue to focus and trust on God and focus on His Word, knowing that it is He who can turn my plans into a reality. Thank you for listening and be blessed.